She can barely hold a job. My mom testified against me. The Chief Justice stood up. She's been a judge for 6 years. Mom's face went white. My name is Adelaide Bennett, and at 30 years old, I never imagined my own mother would try to destroy me in court. I had spent my entire life seeking her approval, only to watch her testify that I was an unstable mother who could barely hold a job. What she did not know was that I had been a family court judge for 6 years. The Chief Justice knew exactly who I was, and what happened next silenced the entire courtroom. If you are watching this video, growing up in Lexington, a quaint town outside Boston, I always felt like I was performing on a stage where the sole audience member of my mother Evelyn never applauded. Our modest two-story colonial house looked perfect from the outside, just the way my mother wanted everything in her life to appear. Inside those walls, however, was a different story. My mother was the embodiment of perfectionism. Nothing was ever good enough, especially when it came to me. If I brought home in a minus, she would ask why it was not an A+. If I won second place in a competition, she would point out the girl who came in first. Her standards were impossible to meet, and her criticism was relentless. Adelaide, stand up straight. Adelaide, your hair is a mess. Adelaide, that outfit makes you look heavy. Her words followed me everywhere, echoing in my head, even when she was not around. I tried desperately to please her, rearranging myself into configurations I thought might finally earn her approval. It never came. My father James was the buffer between us. He was a kind man with gentle eyes who would wink at me across the dinner table whenever my mother started in on one of her critical tangents. Your mother just wants what is best for you, he would tell me later, but his eyes held an apology. He loved her, but he saw how her words cut into me when I was 12. My father had a heart attack while driving home from work. His car swerved off the road into a tree. He died instantly. I lost my defender, my ally, the only person who made me feel like I was enough, just as I was after his death. My mother changed her criticism, intensified, as if she needed to compensate for the absence of his gentleness with an extra dose of her harshness. She became obsessed with appearances, with what the neighbors might think, with maintaining the illusion of the perfect family, despite our obvious brokenness. We need to be strong, Adelaide, she would say. No one respects weakness. But what she meant was that she did not want me to grieve publicly, to show any sign that we were struggling. My tears were relegated to my pillow at night, silent and hidden. School became my refuge. I threw myself into academics with a fervor that surprised even my teachers. If I could not earn my mother's approval, I would earn it from everyone else. Each perfect test score, each academic award was a shield I held up against her criticism. They rarely worked. Sarah Miller's daughter just got into Harvard. Early decisions, she would say, ignoring my straight-A report card on the table between us. And she plays 3 instruments. I did not play any instruments. I was not exceptional in any way that mattered to my mother. But I discovered something during those painful teenage years. I had a passion for justice. It started in debate club, where I found my voice arguing points of ethics and law. It continued when I joined a youth court program and felt for the first time like I was exactly where I belonged. When I told my mother I wanted to be a lawyer someday, maybe even a judge, she laughed, not a kind laugh, but the dismissive kind that made my stomach turn. Be realistic, Adelaide. Those positions are for people with connections with pedigrees. Focus on something attainable in that moment, standing in our kitchen with my future dreams. Freshly ridiculed. Something shifted inside me. Her words, instead of crushing me as they usually did, hardened into a determination that would carry me forward. I would become a judge, not despite what my mother believed about me, but because of it. I would prove her wrong. College applications became my secret rebellion. I applied to 17 schools without telling my mother about most of them. When the acceptance letters started arriving, including one from Boston University, with a partial scholarship, I felt a surge of power. For once, I had options that were not dictated by her expectations. Boston University is too expensive, she said dismissively. When I showed her the letter, the community college is perfectly adequate. I went to Boston University anyway to cover what the scholarship did not. I worked 3 jobs mornings at a coffee shop near campus evenings at the university library, and weekends as a research assistant for one of my professors. I barely slept. My mother called it stubbornness. I called it Independence Law School. Applications followed the same pattern. I studied obsessively for the LSAT, scored in the 90th percentile, and earned a spot at Harvard Law. When I called to tell my mother, her response was predictable. "Harvard, how do you expect to pay for that, always reaching beyond your means, Adelaide?" I did not tell her about the scholarship. I did not tell her about the loans. I did not tell her about the continuing jobs that would help me make ends meet. I simply said I will figure it out and hung up. Harvard Law School was where I met Thomas. He sat next to me in constitutional law. This tall, thoughtful man with kind eyes that reminded me painfully of my father. Unlike everyone else who seemed to be competing for attention, Thomas asked questions that showed he was actually listening to the answers. He noticed things, including me. "You never talk about your family," he observed one night as we studied together in the library. We had been dating for 3 months by then. "Not much to talk about," I replied, keeping my eyes on my textbook. "Everyone has a story," he said quietly. That night, I told him about my mother, about her impossible standards, and constant criticism about how I had spent my entire life trying and failing to be good enough. Thomas listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he took my hand. "She's wrong about you," he said simply. "And someday she will realize that I married Thomas in our final year of law school." My mother attended the small ceremony, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as she straightened my simple dress in the back room of the courthouse where we held the ceremony. "Marriage and a career do not mix well. You will have to choose eventually." I did not bother responding. I was done trying to convince her of anything. After graduation, Thomas and I both found positions at firms in Boston. His focus was corporate law. Mine was family law. I worked 70-hour weeks, determined to distinguish myself, when an opportunity came to clerk for a judge. I leapt at it. The clerkship led to a position as an assistant district attorney, where I specialized in cases involving children. My mother remained unimpressed. "Another new job cannot stick with anything, can you?" she commented during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. I stopped telling her about my career progress after that. Let her believe what she wanted. I knew the truth. I was not jumping from job to job. I was climbing. When Lily was born 2 years later, my life expanded in ways I had not anticipated. This tiny human, with Thomas's kind eyes and my stubborn chin, became the center of my universe. For the first time, I understood what it meant to love someone unconditionally. I vowed that my daughter would never question her worth the way I had been forced to question mine. Balancing motherhood and my career was challenging. There were nights when I rocked Lily to sleep with one arm while reviewing case files with the other. There were mornings when I showed up to court, having slept 3 hours with baby formula stains on my blazer that I covered with my robe. But I made it work. Thomas and I were partners in every sense, trading off responsibilities and supporting each other's ambitions. When the call came about the judicial appointment, I was changing Lily's diaper. I was 24 years old, one of the youngest judges ever appointed in our district. The committee had been impressed by my work, as an ADA particularly my handling of sensitive cases involving children in crisis. The position was in family court, exactly where I wanted to be. I accepted immediately. That night, Thomas brought home champagne, and we celebrated in our small apartment with Lily babbling happily between us on the couch. "Are you going to tell your mother?" Thomas asked gently. I considered it for a moment. I imagined her pride, her realization that she had been wrong about me all along. Then reality reasserted itself. "No," I said finally. She would find a way to diminish it, to make it seem less than what it is. So my mother continued to believe that I was professionally unstable, jumping from job to job, unable to commit to a career path. Meanwhile, I donned a black robe each morning and made decisions that affected the lives of families in crisis. The irony was not lost on me. For 6 years, I served as a judge, while my mother remained ignorant of my position. We maintained a distant relationship, obligatory holiday visits, and occasional phone calls that left me drained. She doted on Lily, but could not resist criticizing my parenting. "She seems very attached to that pacifier, you know, that will ruin her teeth. Is that what you are feeding her?" No wonder she is so fussy. You work too much. Children need their mothers present. I learned to let her words roll off me, protecting both myself and Lily from their sting. What I did not know was that my mother was collecting these moments, storing them away like ammunition for a battle I did not yet know was coming. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was in my chambers reviewing a particularly difficult custody case when my sister Natalie's name flashed on my phone screen. Natalie and I had never been close, 2 years younger than me. She had been our mother's favorite, the compliant daughter who never challenged authority. At least that was true until her junior year of college, when she dropped out and disappeared into a world of substance abuse that had claimed her for the past decade. Adelaide. Her voice was thin, fragile. I need help. She was in rehab again, her third attempt at sobriety. This time, Child Protective Services had intervened. Her children, Emma and Jack, ages 6 and 4, had been found alone in their apartment, while Natalie was unconscious from an overdose in the bathroom. She had survived, but her parental rights were in jeopardy. They say I cannot have them back until I complete the program and prove I can stay clean, she said, her voice breaking. They are talking about foster care, Adelaide. Please do not let them put my babies in foster care. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what she was asking. Thomas and I had discussed taking in Natalie's children before during her previous crises, but it had never come to this point. Now it was real. These children, my niece and nephew, whom I had only met a handful of times, needed a home. Let me talk to Thomas. I said we will figure something out. Thomas did not hesitate. Of course we will take them, he said. That night, as we sat at our kitchen table after Lily had gone to bed, they are family. The next morning, I contacted CPS and began the process of applying for temporary custody of Emma and Jack. The social worker seemed relieved that a family member was stepping forward. The children had been in emergency foster care for 3 days, frightened and confused. There is just one thing the social worker mentioned near the end of our call. Your mother has also filed for custody. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mother. The woman who had criticized every parenting choice I had ever made wanted to take on 2 traumatized children. It made no sense. Are you sure, I asked stupidly? Yes. Evelyn Peterson filed yesterday. She said she is the maternal grandmother and believes the children would be better off with her. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. This was not about Emma and Jack. This was about control, about proving that she not. I knew what was best for children. It was the ultimate statement of her lack of faith in me as a mother. I tried calling her immediately, but she did not answer. Instead, she sent a text. We will let the courts decide what is best for the children. The courts. My domain. Except that I could not preside over a case involving my own family. And my mother knew that. What she did not know was that I would be appearing in court not as a judge, but as a petitioner for custody, revealing my profession in the process. The first mediation session was scheduled for the following week. I took personal leave from my judicial duties, citing a family emergency. The Chief Justice Morgan Thompson was understanding. She was a mother herself and had been a mentor to me since my appointment. Take whatever time you need, she said. Family comes first. I arrived at the mediation room to find my mother already seated, her posture rigid. Her face set in that familiar expression of disapproval. She wore a navy blue suit that looked new, her hair freshly colored and styled, every detail calculated to project the image of a capable, responsible grandmother. Hello, Mother, I said, sitting across from her. Adelaide. She nodded slightly. I assume you understand why I had to do this. Actually, no. I do not understand at all. Thomas and I are perfectly capable of caring for Emma and Jack. She gave a small dismissive sniff. You have always put your career first. These children need stability, attention, proper guidance. They need someone who will be present. The mediator, a kind-faced woman named Patricia, entered before I could respond to this insult. She explained the process and asked us each to state our case for why we should have custody of the children. I spoke of our home with its spare bedroom that could easily accommodate both children. I talked about Lily, who is excited to meet her cousins. I explained that Thomas and I had flexible work arrangements that would allow us to be available for the children while maintaining our careers. Then my mother spoke, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. My daughter. She began, her voice dripping with concern. Has never been able to maintain stability in her life. She jumps from job to job, never settling, always chasing the next opportunity. Her husband works long hours, and she leaves her own daughter with a nanny most days. These traumatized children need constant care and attention, which I am prepared to provide. I am retired with a comfortable home and savings. I can dedicate myself to them fully. The mediator looked at me. Would you like to respond to your mother's characterization of your employment history? I opened my mouth, then closed it. A part of me wanted to shout the truth. I am a judge. I have held the same position for 6 years. But another part, the wounded child still seeking approval, could not form the words. Instead, I said, my employment is stable. I can provide documentation. My mother smiled thinly. We will see. The mediation ended without resolution. As we left, my mother touched my arms, stopping me in the hallway. I am doing this for the children's sake, she said. You must see that they would be better off with me. No, mother. What I see is that you have never believed in me, and this is just one more way to prove it. Her eyes narrowed. If you really cared about those children, you would step aside. I pulled my arm away. If you really cared about me, you would have supported me just once in my life. I walked away, my hands shaking. This was no longer just about Emma and Jack, though they remained my primary concern. This was about 3 decades of criticism and doubt. This was about finally standing up to the woman who had never thought I was good enough. What I did not know then was how far she would go to win. She is gathering evidence against you. My attorney, Sophia Winters, informed me during our preparation session for the custody hearing. We sat in her office, a sunlit space, with views of the Boston skyline that contrasted sharply with the darkness of our conversation. Evidence. What kind of evidence, I asked, though a part of me already knew the answer. Sophia slid a folder across her desk. Your mother has submitted a detailed account of what she calls your parental deficiencies. She has dates, incidents, quotes. She claims you have been neglectful of Lily and would be similarly neglectful of Emma and Jack. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were pages of meticulously documented criticisms spanning from Lily's birth to our most recent family gathering 3 months ago. Every perceived mistake, every parenting choice my mother disagreed with, all carefully noted with dates and circumstances. April 3rd, 2 years ago. Adelaide arrived 45 minutes late to Easter dinner. Lily was fussy and appeared overtired. When I suggested the child needed a more consistent schedule, Adelaide dismissed my concern. November 28th last year found Lily playing unsupervised in the living room while Adelaide was on her phone in the kitchen. Child could have injured herself on numerous hazards on the list. When a chronicle of manufactured inadequacies that made me look like a careless, self-absorbed mother, the final entry turned my blood cold. June 10th. June 10th. This year, Adelaide admitted she sometimes takes work calls during Lily's dinner time, prioritizes career over child's basic needs. Pattern of behavior suggests fundamental unsuitability for taking on additional childcare responsibilities. She has been planning this. I whispered all those visits those times. She offered to watch Lily. She was building a case against me. Sophia nodded grimly. And she has recruited witnesses. Your Aunt Claire, your cousin Beth, even your old neighbor Mrs. Sullivan, all prepared to testify about your supposed shortcomings as a parent. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like the air had been sucked from the room. They do not even know me. I see Aunt Claire once a year at Christmas. She moved away when Lily was an infant. Your mother can be very persuasive, it seems, Sophia said, and people are often willing to make statements about things they have minimal direct knowledge of, especially when it comes to family matters. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas home with Lily. Social worker just left after home. Evaluation went well, I think. Love you. At least that was something. Our home was clean, safe, and child-friendly. We had already prepared the room for Emma and Jack with twin beds, colorful bedding, and age-appropriate toys. The social worker had seemed impressed with our preparation, and Lily's obvious happiness and well-being. What about my job? I asked Sophia. She keeps saying I jumped from job to job when the truth comes out that I have been a judge for 6 years. That is actually our strongest counterpoint. Sophia confirmed. The revelation about your career stability and position will significantly undermine her credibility. But Adelaide, I have to ask, why did you never tell her about being a judge? I stared out the window at the city below, considering the question. At first, it was because I knew she would find some way to diminish it, to make it seem less than what it was. Then, as time passed, it became, I do not know, a boundary. The one part of my life she could not criticize because she did not know about it. Sophia nodded, understanding in her eyes. Well, she is about to find out in the most public way possible. The hearing is scheduled for next week, and Judge Thompson will be presiding. Morgan. But she knows me exactly. When your mother claimed you were unstable professionally, the clerk recognized your name and brought it to Judge Thompson's attention. She specifically requested to take the case. A small spark of hope flickered inside me. Morgan Thompson was fair and principled. She would not show favoritism, but she would ensure the truth came to light. That evening, as Thomas and I sat on our back porch after putting Lily to bed, I showed him my mother's documented list of my failures. This is insane, he said, his voice tight with anger. These are completely normal parenting moments, twisted to sound neglectful. Being late to Easter dinner makes you an unfit mother. Taking a work call during dinner occasionally means you do not care about your child. By these standards, no parent would qualify as adequate. I leaned against his shoulder, exhausted. She has always been like this. Nothing I do is ever good enough. But I never thought she would go this far. We will fight this, Thomas said firmly, and we will win. The truth is on our side. But as the hearing approached, my confidence wavered. Rumors were spreading through the legal community about the case. Colleagues looked at me with curiosity or pity. I had taken a leave of absence from my judicial duties, but the courthouse was still my workplace, and now it would be the stage for this painful family drama. 2 days before the hearing, Thomas found me sitting on the floor of what would be Emma and Jack's room, surrounded by children's books, crying silently. Adelaide, he said, sitting beside me and taking my hand. Talk to me. What if she is right? I whispered. What if I am not good enough? What if I cannot give these children what they need? Thomas took my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. Listen to me. You are an exceptional mother to Lily. You will be an exceptional aunt and guardian to Emma and Jack. Your mother's voice in your head is not the truth. It never has been. I nodded, wanting desperately to believe him. The day before the hearing, we met with Emma and Jack for the first supervised visit CPS had arranged. They were beautiful children, with Natalie's dark hair and solemn eyes. Emma, the 6-year-old, was protective of her younger brother, constantly checking to make sure he was okay. Jack at 4 was shy, but curious, peeking at us from behind his sister. Hi, I said, kneeling to their level. I am your Aunt Adelaide, and this is your Uncle Thomas. And this is your cousin Lily. Lily excited to meet her, sir. Cousin stepped forward with a book in her hands. Do you like stories? She asked them. Emma nodded cautiously. Me too, Lily said, and sat down cross-legged on the floor, patting the space beside her. Slowly, Emma and Jack joined her, and as Lily began to read the book she had memorized, I saw the first hint of relaxation in their small bodies. Thomas squeezed my hand, and in that moment I knew with absolute certainty that we were doing the right thing. These children belonged with us as part of our family, and I would fight with everything I had to make that happen. That night I could not sleep. I kept imagining the courtroom, my mother's accusations, the public revelation of my career. Tomorrow, everything would change for better or worse. The truth would finally come out. The morning of the hearing dawned clear and bright, a beautiful June day that belied the storm brewing inside the courthouse. I stood on the steps of the building where I normally entered through the judicial chambers, feeling strangely disoriented. Today, I would walk through the main entrance like any other citizen seeking justice. Ready? Thomas asked his hand. Steady on my back. I nodded, though ready was the last thing I felt. We addressed carefully that morning. Professional but approachable. I wore a navy blue dress with a light cardigan. Deliberate choices to project stability and warmth. Thomas was in a gray suit, his lucky tie, the one Lily had picked out for him on his last birthday. Inside the courthouse was already bustling with the day's business. A few colleagues nodded to me as we passed their expressions carefully. Neutral. News of the case had spread, and I could feel curious eyes following us as we made our way to the designated courtroom. My mother was already there, seated beside her attorney, a sharp-featured man named Richard Harlow. Known for his aggressive tactics in family court, she wore a conservative gray suit with a pearl necklace. Her hair perfectly styled the very picture of a dignified grandmother. When she saw me, she straightened her shoulders but did not acknowledge me otherwise. Emma and Jack's social worker, Miss Patel, sat in the front row, a thick file on her lap. She had visited both our home and my mother's during the evaluation process. Her report would carry significant weight in the judge's decision. At precisely 9:00, the bailiff called the court to order, and Chief Justice Morgan Thompson entered. Tall and imposing in her black robes with silver threaded through her dark hair, she commanded respect merely by her presence. She nodded to the court and took her seat. "We are here in the matter of guardianship for minors Emma and Jack Collins." She began, her voice clear and authoritative. "I understand both the maternal Aunt Adelaide Bennett and the maternal grandmother Evelyn Peterson are seeking custody." The preliminary matters proceeded with formal statements from both attorneys. Sophia presented our case first, highlighting our stable home financial security and commitment to keeping the siblings together in a loving family environment with their cousin. She mentioned my stable employment without specifying my role as a judge, as we had agreed to let that revelation come naturally. Then Richard Harlow rose from my mother's case. His opening statement painted a picture of my mother as the selfless grandmother willing to devote her retirement years to raising her grandchildren. Contrasted with me, the supposedly career-obsessed niece who could not be relied upon. "Your Honor," he concluded, "we will present evidence that Miss Bennett's home environment and work history make her fundamentally unsuitable as a guardian for these vulnerable children." I felt Thomas tense beside me at these words. I squeezed his hand silently, urging him to remain calm. We had anticipated this approach. The first witnesses were character references for both sides. Thomas's parents testified to our parenting abilities and stable home. My colleague from the courthouse, Judge David Chen, carefully avoided mentioning my judicial role while attesting to my character and integrity. Then came my mother's witnesses. Aunt Claire took the stand, nervously avoiding my gaze, as she confirmed that she had concerns about my parenting based on family gatherings where I seemed distracted with Lily on cross-examination. Sophia established that Aunt Claire had only seen me with Lily 4 times in 8 years, hardly enough to form a comprehensive opinion of my parenting. My cousin Beth testified via video link from California. Repeating almost verbatim phrases I recognized from my mother's documented list of my failures. When Sophia asked when she had last seen me in person, she admitted it had been 5 years ago at a family reunion when Lily was 3 years old. By mid-morning, it was my mother's turn to testify. She settled into the witness stand with the composed confidence of someone who believed absolutely in her own righteousness. Richard Harlow led her through prepared questions about her relationship with Emma and Jack, her home, her financial stability, and her availability to care for the children. Then came the attack I had been dreading. "Mrs. Peterson, do you have concerns about your daughter's ability to provide a stable home for these children?" Harlow asked. My mother sighed, a performance of reluctance that made my teeth clench. "I do not want to speak ill of my daughter." She began the very definition of speaking ill. But Adelaide has always struggled with commitment and follow-through. As a mother, I have watched her jump from interest to interest, job to job, never settling. Even with Lily, she seems more concerned with her career than her child's needs. "Could you elaborate on her employment history?" Harlow prompted this. Was it the moment of reckoning? My mother leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on a tone of sad concern. "Adelaide has never held a job for more than a year or two. Right after law school, she worked at a firm, then left to clerk for a judge, then became some kind of assistant prosecutor, then something else. She constantly changes positions, always claiming it is a step up, but never finding satisfaction. She can barely hold a job." A murmur ran through the courtroom. I sat perfectly still, feeling strangely calm, now that the accusation had finally been made explicit. Thomas's hand tightened around mine. "And you believe this employment instability affects her parenting?" Harlow continued. "Of course it does. Children need consistency stability. Adelaide's restlessness, her constant career changes, create an unpredicted stable environment. Emma and Jack have already experienced too much instability with my younger daughter's issues. They need a rock, not another person whose priorities lie elsewhere. I felt a tear slide down my cheek and brushed it away quickly. These were not just cruel words. They were a fundamental misunderstanding of who I was, who I had always been. My mother truly believed I was incapable, unreliable, inadequate. When Richard Harlow finished his questioning, Sophia stood for cross-examination. She approached the witness stand with measured steps. "Mrs. Peterson," she began, "when was the last time your daughter told you about a job change?" My mother frowned slightly. "She does not always tell me directly, but I know she has moved around frequently in the legal profession. So you do not actually know her current employment status or position. I know she works as some kind of lawyer," my mother said dismissively. "The specifics change so often, it is hard to keep track." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "Your Honor, I would like to introduce evidence regarding Miss Bennett's employment history." Chief Justice Thompson nodded. "Proceed." Sophia handed a document to the court clerk, who passed copies to the judge. "My mother's attorney. And my mother. This is a verified record of Adelaide Bennett's employment history since graduating from Harvard Law School 8 years ago." My mother glanced at the paper, her expression unchanged. "Mrs. Peterson, would you please read the final entry on that employment record?" Sophia requested. My mother squinted at the document. It says, "Family Court Judge, Massachusetts 6th District. Duration 6 years to present." She looked up, confusion crossing her features. The courtroom had gone completely silent. Every eye moved between my mother and me. Chief Justice Thompson cleared her throat. "For the record," she said, her voice resonating in the quiet room, "I can confirm that Adelaide Bennett has served as a judge in this very courthouse for the past 6 years. She is one of the youngest judges ever appointed in our district and has an exemplary record on the bench, particularly in cases involving children's welfare." My mother's face went white. Her hand, still holding the employment record, trembled visibly. "She has been a judge for 6 years." The Chief Justice repeated the words, hanging in the air like a verdict. Richard Harlow leaned over to whisper something to my mother, who shook her head slightly, still staring at me with an expression of disbelief. "Mrs. Peterson," Sophia continued gently, "given this information, would you like to revise your statement about your daughter's employment stability?" My mother swallowed hard. "I was not aware of this position because your daughter stopped informing you about her career achievements after years of having them dismissed and criticized. Is that correct?" Before my mother could answer, Richard Harlow stood. "Objection! Your Honor, counsel is testifying." "Sustained," Chief Justice Thompson said. "Miss Winters, please rephrase." Sophia nodded. "Mrs. Peterson, when was the last time you expressed pride or approval regarding one of your daughter's career accomplishments?" My mother's gaze dropped to her hands. "I do not recall specifically." "No further questions, Your Honor," Sophia said, returning to her seat beside me as my mother stepped down from the witness stand. Her shoulders slumped in a way I had never seen before. For the first time in my memory, she looked small. The next witness was Miss Patel, the social worker, who testified that both homes were physically appropriate for the children, but that her recommendation favored placement with us due to the presence of a cousin close in age and the strong family unit we had demonstrated. Finally, it was my turn to testify. As I took the oath, I felt a strange sense of peace. The truth was out now. Whatever happened next, I would no longer be carrying the weight of that secret. Sophia led me through questions about our home, our plans for integrating Emma and Jack into our family, and my relationship with my sister Natalie. Then she addressed the elephant in the room. "Adelaide, could you explain to the court why you never informed your mother about your position as a judge?" I took a deep breath and looked directly at my mother for the first time that day. From the time I was a child, nothing I did was ever good enough. Every achievement was met with criticism, every goal dismissed as unrealistic. When I was appointed to the bench 6 years ago, I made the decision not to share that information with my mother, because I wanted one part of my life to be free from her judgment. I wanted to do my job without hearing all the ways she thought I was failing at it. The courtroom was silent as I continued. I am not an unstable person. I am not an inadequate mother. I have built a career, I am proud of a family I cherish, and a home where Lily thrives. Emma and Jack deserve that same environment. They deserve to grow up believing in themselves, not constantly questioning their worth. When Sophia finished her questions, Richard Harlow declined to cross-examine me. There was nothing left to challenge. Chief Justice Thompson called a recess before delivering her decision. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught a glimpse of my mother sitting alone on a bench in the hallway, looking lost. For a moment, I almost went to her. Then Thomas touched my arm, and we walked outside to breathe in the fresh air and prepare for whatever came next. The courtroom seemed more crowded when we returned after the recess. Word having spread about the dramatic revelation, I kept my eyes forward as we took our seats, avoiding the curious glances from spectators. Thomas sat beside me, his steady presence a comfort as we awaited the Chief Justice's decision. My mother entered last, her attorney guiding her to their table. She looked diminished somehow, her earlier confidence replaced by a stiff uncertainty. When our eyes briefly met, she quickly looked away, a gesture that spoke volumes about how the power dynamic between us had shifted. Chief Justice Thompson returned to the bench, her expression unreadable as she settled into her chair and arranged the papers before her. The courtroom fell silent in anticipation. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented today, she began. I have reached a decision in the matter of guardianship for Emma and Jack Collins. She outlined the factors considered the stability of both households, the relationship with the children, the support systems in place, and the recommendations of the social worker. I held my breath, feeling Thomas's hand tightened around mine while I recognized Mrs. Peterson's genuine desire to care for her grandchildren. I find that placement with Adelaide and Thomas Bennett provides the most beneficial environment for the children at this time. The presence of a cousin close in age, the demonstrated parenting capabilities, and the strong recommendation of the social worker all support this decision. Relief flooded through me so powerful that for a moment I could not hear anything else the judge was saying. We had one. Emma and Jack would be coming home with us. Additionally, Chief Justice Thompson continued, I am ordering a visitation schedule that includes regular contact with Mrs. Peterson, recognizing the importance of maintaining that grandparent relationship. The details of this schedule will be worked out with the assistance of family services. My mother's attorney leaned over to whisper something to her, but she shook her head slightly, her eyes fixed on the surface of the table before her. This court will retain jurisdiction to modify these arrangements as circumstances change, including potential reunification with the mother upon successful completion of her rehabilitation program. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck, and the tension that had held me rigid throughout the hearing finally released. Thomas embraced me, and I buried my face against his shoulder, overwhelmed with emotion. Congratulations, Sophia said warmly, as people began to file out of the courtroom. This is the right outcome for those children. I nodded, unable to form words past the lump in my throat as we gathered our things to leave. I noticed my mother still seated at her table now alone, as her attorney spoke with the court clerk across the room. On impulse, I approached her mother. I said softly. She looked up, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I could not fully decipher. Hurt, certainly. Anger, perhaps, but also something that might have been shame. 6 years, she said, her voice barely audible. You have been a judge for 6 years, and I did not know. You never asked. I replied simply. You assumed I was failing. She flinched slightly at my words. I was trying to protect you from disappointment. The world is harsh, Adelaide. I wanted you to be prepared by making sure I never felt good enough. That was not protection. That was control. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You have always been so stubborn, so convinced. You knew better than me, and I proved I did. I said not unkindly. Mother, I built a life you know nothing about because you never bothered to really see me, to listen to me. You created a version of me in your head that does not exist. She looked away, gathering her purse and standing abruptly. The judge said I get visitation with the children. Yes, and we will honor that. But there will be boundaries, Mother. I will not allow Emma and Jack to grow up feeling the way I did, constantly criticized and diminished. I never. She began, then stopped for perhaps the first time in our relationship. She seemed at a loss for words. We can talk about arrangements next week, I said. For now, Thomas and I need to prepare for bringing Emma and Jack home. I turned to go, but her voice stopped me. Adelaide! She hesitated. Congratulations on becoming a judge. That is quite an achievement. The words were stiff awkward, as if she was speaking a foreign language, but they were the closest thing to approval she had offered me in decades. I nodded once in acknowledgement, then walked away to join Thomas and Sophia by the door outside the courthouse. The bright afternoon sunlight felt symbolic, illuminating a new chapter in all our lives. Thomas called the social worker to arrange for Emma and Jack to move in the following day. I stood on the steps, breathing deeply, feeling both victorious and strangely sad. Are you okay? Thomas asked, slipping his arm around my waist. Yes, I said. It is just, I never wanted it to come to this. A public confrontation, our family issues exposed in court. I know, but maybe it needed to happen. Your mother has been living in a fiction of her own creation for years. Now she has to face reality. We drove home to prepare for the children's arrival, stopping to buy a welcome banner that Lily insisted on making herself. As I helped her with the letters, carefully guiding her small hands, I made a silent vow that these children would always know they were enough exactly as they were. That evening, as we finished dinner, the doorbell rang. Thomas went to answer it while I helped Lily with her dessert. A moment later, he returned to the kitchen with an unexpected visitor. My mother stood awkwardly in our dining room, looking out of place and uncomfortable. Lily, always friendly, waved happily. Hi, Grandma. Hello, Lily. My mother said, her voice softer than usual. Then to me, May I speak with you privately? Thomas nodded to me. I will get Lily ready for bath time. Take your time. I led my mother to the living room, gesturing for her to sit on the couch, while I took the chair opposite. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Your home is lovely, she finally said, glancing around at the comfortable lived-in space, with toys neatly corralled in colorful bins and family photos on every surface. Thank you, I replied, waiting for whatever had brought her here. She smoothed her skirt over her knees, a nervous gesture I had rarely seen from her. I've been thinking about what happened today, about what you said. I remained silent, allowing her the space to continue. Perhaps I have been too critical over the years. I thought I was preparing you for a world that would judge you harshly. I did not want you to be disappointed when things did not work out as you hoped. But things did work out, Mother. I became exactly what I said I wanted to be. And you missed it because you were so certain I would fail. She flinched slightly. Yes, I see that now. She paused, struggling visibly with what to say next. Adelaide, I do not know how to be different than I am, but I would like to try for Emma and Jack's sake, and for Lily's, and perhaps for ours as well. It was not quite an apology, but from my mother. It was extraordinary, an acknowledgement, at least, that something needed to change. It will take time, I said carefully. Trust is built slowly, especially after it has been broken repeatedly. She nodded, her eyes downcast. I understand. I just want a chance. We can start with the visitation schedule for Emma and Jack. I offered. Perhaps you could come for Sunday dinners. Spend some time getting to know them in our home first, where they feel safe. I would like that, she said. And for a brief moment, I glimpsed something in her eyes. I had been seeking my entire life. Respect. As she rose to leave, she paused by the mantel, where a photo stood of me in my judicial robes. Thomas and Lily beside me at my investiture ceremony. You look very distinguished, she said quietly. Your father would have been proud. She left before I could respond, the mention of my father bringing a fresh ache to my heart. I stood in the doorway, watching her walk to her car. This complicated woman who had shaped so much of who I was, for better and worse. Thomas found me there a few minutes later, still looking out at the now empty street. What did she want? He asked gently. A second chance, I think. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Are you going to give it to her? I considered the question carefully. Not unkindly, but yes. A chance for the children's sake, and maybe for hers too. She is not young anymore, Thomas. I do not want to look back someday and regret not trying. He nodded against my shoulder. You have always been the strongest person I know, Adelaide Bennett, and the most compassionate. That night, as I checked on Lily one last time before bed, watching her peaceful sleep in the glow of her nightlight, I thought about the legacy we pass to our children, not just our features or our mannerisms, but our wounds, our fears, our beliefs about ourselves and the world. I had spent 30 years believing I was never quite good enough, because that was what my mother had taught me. I would not pass that belief to Lily or to Emma and Jack. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, integrating two traumatized children into our home, establishing boundaries with my mother, balancing my return to the bench with my expanded family responsibilities. But tonight, in the quiet of my daughter's room, I felt ready for whatever came next. For the first time in my life, I knew with absolute certainty that I was enough. 3 months after the courtroom revelation, I stood in my chambers, adjusting my judicial robe before heading into court. The familiar weight of the black fabric settled on my shoulders, a physical reminder of the authority I had earned and the responsibility I carried. On my desk sat 3 framed photos, one of Thomas and me on our wedding day, one of Lily at her 5th birthday party, and a new addition, Emma and Jack laughing as they played in our backyard sprinkler with Lily. My return to the bench after the custody hearing had been met with quiet respect from my colleagues. No one mentioned the case directly, but I had received several notes of support and the occasional knowing nod in the courthouse hallways. Chief Justice Thompson had stopped by my chambers on my first day back. Family comes first, Adelaide, she had said simply. But we are glad to have you back. The children who come before this court need judges who understand what is truly at stake. I had thanked her not just for her words, but for her role in revealing the truth. She had waved away my gratitude. The truth has a way of emerging when it is most needed. At home, we had settled into a new rhythm, with 5 of us instead of 3. Emma and Jack had arrived with small suitcases and guarded expressions, uncertain of this new arrangement. Lily had immediately appointed herself their personal tour guide, showing them the backyard tree swing, the secret cupboard under the stairs, where we kept board games, and the kitchen drawer dedicated to art supplies. You can have anything in here, she had told them solemnly, except the glitter. That is only for special projects, because Daddy says it multiplies when you are not looking. The first few weeks had been challenging. Jack had nightmares that sent him screaming into wakefulness, his small body shaking with terror, until one of us could reach him. Emma, protective and watchful, had initially insisted on supervising every interaction between her brother and us, as if she did not quite trust that we would take proper care of him. Thomas and I had established a stable routine, understanding that consistency would help them feel secure. Bedtimes, meals, playtimes, they all followed a predictable pattern. Slowly, the children began to relax. Jack's nightmares became less frequent. Emma started to play more and supervised less. They began to feel like part of our family rather than visitors in our home. Natalie called weekly from rehab, her voice stronger each time she spoke to her children, with a combination of love and regret that broke my heart. I'm getting better, she told them, and Adelaide and Uncle Thomas will take good care of you until I can. I had visited her twice, seeing for myself the progress she was making. This time felt different from her previous attempts at home. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck. Story 2. Cole is my name. As a 28-year-old, I believed I understood what family meant until approximately 6 months ago. I grew up in a white-sided suburban home with a porch swing that creaked when you rocked too hard in a neighborhood just outside of San Diego. To the planet, we appeared to be a typical, contented family. Dusty, a golden retriever, 2 boys and 2 parents. However, there was always something a little strange going on behind the tidy drapes and cheerful Christmas cards. When I was 2 years old, I was adopted. Dennis and Linda. My parents had been unsuccessfully trying to conceive for years. 3 years later, they welcomed their miracle baby, my younger brother Ryan, and the atmosphere in the house changed the instant he was born. It seemed subtle at first. There are more pictures of Ryan on the fridge. There are other drawings of him on the walls. Then it became clear that despite his age, he was given the larger room. He received the louder birthday celebrations, the nicer bike, and the new clothing. Despite their behaviors, I was constantly assured that my adoption made me unique. I make an effort to ignore it. I put a lot of effort into my studies, avoided difficulty, and received a scholarship to a reputable university. Not a single penny was contributed by my parents. Even though I knew they had just paid for Ryan's private pitching coach and refurbished their kitchen, they claimed they couldn't afford it. I didn't hate them, though. Not quite. Maybe that's simply the way it happens sometimes, I thought. It might not have been personal, but Ryan took it personally. At family gatherings, Dad often reminded me that I was the odd one out and the extra child. Instead of shutting it down, my parents would laugh when he made comments about it being only a trial run. "You're lucky they even kept you," he remarked, staring me in the eye when I was 16. I can still clearly recall that night. Up until dawn, I had gone upstairs and gazed at the ceiling, wondering if I was simply a visitor in my own house. 10 years later, after graduating from college, I relocated to Seattle, found employment in the IT industry, rose through the ranks, and finally launched my own consulting business. I put all I had into it, even if it wasn't particularly showy at first. I was constructing something I never anticipated aid from my family, and they never provided it while Ryan was flunk out of community college and posting shirtless pictures on Instagram. We communicated sometimes through messages and out-of-obligation holiday calls, but the gap between us seemed like an unwritten contract. My parents' health began to deteriorate last year. My mom was diagnosed with early-onset dementia, while my dad suffered a mild stroke. I made sure their insurance covered everything, traveled down many times, and offered assistance where I could set up appointments. Naturally, Ryan didn't do anything, but he was always present for the pictures. Images of smiling people at their bedsides with phrases like, "catch every moment." I try not to be bothered by it. It wasn't about recognition, I told myself. The will then appeared. I received an email from the estate lawyer requesting me to attend the reading on a bright March day. I descended on the following flight. We met at the office of Mr. Wilcox, a weary-looking attorney with coffee stains on his collar and a receding hairline. Wearing sunglasses indoors and smelling like whatever cologne influencers bathe in these days, Ryan arrived late. There were no parents present. 3 weeks had elapsed between them. My mother first, followed soon after by my father. It hadn't really hit home yet. After opening the folder and clearing his voice, Mr. Wilcox started reading to our son Ryan. "We leave the home, the cars, and the remaining $742,000 in savings," he stated. Still waiting to call, I sat. "We leave our best wishes," Mr. Wilcox added. That was it. No letter, no memento, not even an album of pictures. Ryan smiled as though he had won the lotto. "It seems that they have finally acknowledged who the true son is." With no shame, he said, "Realize that you were never truly family, dude." I didn't answer. My expression remained composed, but my chest constricted. Without saying another word, I got up, thanked Mr. Wilcox for his time, and left. I sat in my rented vehicle outside and looked straight ahead. How long I stayed there is unknown to me. Something more than anger was causing my hands to shake. It felt icy, like the last lock on a door I had spent my entire life attempting to open. I did not yell, nor did I cry. I just took a car to the airport and took a flight home. A woman named Diane called me 3 days later. She claimed to be with the Manhattan legal firm Worthington and Blaze and to have urgent news about an estate. She asked for my whole name, including my middle name, which I thought was an error. My birth certificate is the only document mentioned. Diane told me that my biological parents, George and Ava Lennox, had died 2 weeks previously in a private jet crash while I sat on my couch gasping for air. I never used that night. They were unknown to me. They had never met me yet. It seems like they had been quietly monitoring me for years. They were affluent private business people who had founded and sold many clean tech and medicinal enterprises. They had no living relatives and no other children. I was left in charge of everything. A brownstone in New York, a property in the Hamptons, and another in Napa Valley were all part of the estate. A trust fund with a combined worth of almost $42 million that includes stocks, patents, and royalties. The numbers rang in my ears as I sat there with my phone in hand, gazing at my blank TV screen. Instead, I felt something heavier than the shock, amazement, or excitement I had anticipated. Sadness and vindication. I'm very sorry for the parents I've never met, for the children I believed I had, and for the little boy who once hoped they would love him as much as they loved their own son. The next week, I took a plane to New York. Everything was shown to me by the estate manager, the documents, the brownstone, and even a lockbox with handwritten notes. Every year on my birthday, they wrote to me, but they never actually mailed it. In a room full of strangers, I read them for 3 days while sobbing softly. They had desired me. From a distance, they had loved me. Violently, yet silently. They had also vanished. I said nothing. I kept it from Ryan. I told no one from my previous life. I established a foundation in their honor, moved into the brownstone, and devoted my days to making plans for a future I never thought I'd have. That is until Ryan arrived at my house in a frantic manner, saying something about poor investments and the necessity for housing. I uttered the first words I had spoken to him in more than a year after opening the gate and stepping out just far enough for him to see me. When he saw me call, he blinked. As if he was still in shock that I was genuine, he questioned. At first, I remained silent, simply glanced at him. He had shed several pounds, but not in a good way. The type of weight loss brought on by stress and an excessive number of restless nights. His fine clothing were crumpled and a bit too worn around the cuffs, and his once ideal haircut had gone scruffy. He appeared to be a guy attempting to put on the last bits of a life that no longer suited him. "Man," he remarked, feigning amusement. "I had no idea you were a resident. When I was searching for a house to rent, I came across it online and thought, no way this is the course." He looked around at the immaculate front lawn before the gate opened, and he left. The polished brass plaque with the Lennox name and the black wrought iron fence, I remained silent, allowing him to go on and on. I was not going to give him an easy time. He eventually answered, "I didn't come to fight. Simply put, recently things haven't been going well. Some of my investments didn't work out. Burnt in a cryptocurrency transaction, as well as the home where Mom and Dad reside. I was forced to sell it. I have a lot of debt, and the market crashed. Maybe we could chat, I thought." I folded my arms. "Discuss what specifically?" He paused. "Look, I am aware that after the well, things became strange. Man, I was simply taken by surprise. I didn't mean all I said. It wasn't your intention." Without increasing my voice, I repeated, "Not even in motion. That's what you've been saying since we were little. Ryan, you're broke now and you think I forgot. That's the only difference." His body moved uneasily. "It's unfair." "What is unfair?" "Are you growing up in a household where your parents made you feel superior due to your genetic makeup? Giving everything to a son who did nothing but take is unfair. Additionally, nothing was left for the person who did show up when it mattered." He cast his gaze downward. The jaw tightened. "So this is retaliation. Your sibling will be left out in the cold." When I smiled, it was without warmth. "My brother is not you. You were really clear about that." Ryan took a step forward. "All okay, all right. Look, I made a mistake. I'm aware of that. However, you now have money. You can assist. I'm not requesting a handout. Only a place to remain. Until I'm able to stand again." It dawned on me then. He was unaware, not at all. He was unaware of the whole situation. He had no clue where the money came from or what it represented. So I'm not sure if he believed I had won the lottery or sold a business or whatever. "Do you know who lived here before me?" I inquired. He gave a headshake. "My parents by birth." Slowly I said, "They lived here. A few weeks after Mom and Dad died, they died in a car accident. As it happens, they had been observing me from afar my whole childhood and had left everything to me. Millions. Stocks, properties, and a foundation. What else did they leave? Letters. Dozens of them. Each year they wrote to me. They adored me from a distance, even if they were never able to say it face to face." Ryan looked at me as if he was attempting to figure out the equation, attempting to take in what I had just informed him. "Are you implying that they were wealthy?" "I'm saying that I've finally discovered what it's like to be wanted," I answered. "To be selected, not out of obligation or convenience, but out of love." He remained silent. As if someone had disconnected the batteries in the middle of his statement, he simply stood there with his mouth hanging open. Then he tried again with all the elegance of a man drowning. "I apologize. Cole? Really, I was a jerk as a child. I suppose I was jealous. You appeared so put together all the time. You and I didn't need each other." I'm not sure. I suppose I reasoned that I would feel more popular if I pushed you away. I just stated you were the favorite. However, I doubt it brought you joy. Did you do it? He turned his head away. That's where I could have stopped. Closed the gate. Stepped back into the warmth of life after turning around. I was constructing for myself at last, but I stopped for a while. Not out of pity or even sympathy. Just a conclusion. Wait here, I said. I made my way back inside and along the corridor that was lined with framed drawings. My biological mother had sketched me as a child, as well as landscapes and wildflowers. She must have had a memory-based imagination. I took out a single envelope from a drawer in the study. A copy of the original Lennox will and a letter from their lawyer confirming the asset transfer were found within. I returned it and gave it to the gatekeeper. With unsteady fingers, Ryan opened it. His face became pale as he reached the bottom of the document I was scanning. "It's not real," he muttered. "It's real!" He gripped the paper and then turned to face me in a fierce rage. "What the heck, are you just going to watch me sink while perched on your throne?" I didn't recoil. "For the most of my life, I sank while you swam. I believe you will succeed." His mouth twisted. He said nothing else, though, simply stood there for a while before turning slowly and leaving the papers flapping a little in the breeze. I watched till he got to the sidewalk and was engulfed by the traffic. My phone exploded as I turned to get back inside. I didn't recognize the number one. Area code, New Mexico. The other voice sounded cautious and quiet, and everything changed with what they said next. It was a female voice on the telephone, calm but firm. "Is Cole Lennox here?" My throat constricted. "Indeed. Who is that?" A pause occurred. "Elena is my name. UN. I was Ava Lennox, the lawyer for your biological mother. Something came up, which is why I'm phoning you. The original estate package did not include this." Slowly, I shut the door behind me, and the sound of it reverberated through the foyer like the third blow of a gavel. I believed I had it everything already. The letters, the properties, the accounts. Indeed, according to Elena, all of those belonged to the official estate. However, there were precautions. Privacy and legacy were very important to Ava and George. Their wills contained information they didn't even want revealed. However, Ava instructed me to get in touch with you only if your adoptive family contacted you following the transfer of the bequest. I blinked, bewildered. Do you imply they were aware that this would occur? It was something they expected, but I wouldn't say they knew. Ava had a gut feeling about individuals. She reasoned that some people would come running once the dust settled, and they saw you were no longer the wallet with a pulse, as she put it. I nearly burst out laughing, but my breath stuck in my chest. What specifically am I being approached about then? She also left you something else. Elena made a private statement that the estate business shouldn't handle. She didn't want it on any paper trail or in legal hands. I keep it at my Santa Fe personal office in a lockbox. What is it? She added. I think you should come see for yourself. By tomorrow I can have it prepared. You have to meet someone else as well. And Ava had very precise wishes about that. I took a seat on the leather couch carefully, heart pounding in an odd cadence. Who am I going to meet? One more pause. Elena, is this one longer? I asked. She let out a sigh. She is your sister, and her name is Maria. I went cold. The room became silent. No, I said. No, it isn't feasible. They said I was the only child they had. The wolf stated as much. She answered softly. Since you were legally, Maria had a tough life. Before ever meeting Jorge, Ava gave birth to her at the age of 19. The adoption process was closed. It wasn't until just before your 25th birthday that she finally found her after years of searching. Maria didn't want her life to be disturbed because she was married and had kids by that point. And now I inquired. Hardly more than a murmur. Now things are different. Only a few days after Ava's death, Maria contacted her. She desired to speak. She's prepared. I got to my feet without noticing, pacing before the enormous bay windows overlooking the courtyard of Lennox. You're telling me I have a sibling I've never met. What the heck? Who immediately, after I inherit millions, is just now emerging from the woods. I know how that sounds, Elena remarked. Maria, however, has no desire for money. She really stated quite clearly that she doesn't give a damn about the inheritance. All she wants to do is chat. Ava also wanted to meet you two. She stated that you should receive a letter if something were to happen to her, one that clarifies everything. After a moment of stillness, I added, "Text me your address. By dawn, I'll be flying." The following day seemed unreal. I didn't get much sleep. I mentally recited every phrase from that call. Another aspect of my life is a sister, like an unread chapter hidden in the darkness. Prior to me, I had always believed that my biological parents were childless, that it was a one-time sadness for them to give me up. However, I now had to face an unfamiliar situation. I was not as alone as I believed myself to be. Elena was waiting for me in the front lobby of the Santa Fe Law Office, a sandstone structure tucked away in the hills beyond the city. She was a calm, observant woman in her late 50s with kind eyes. Small chat was a waste of her time. Elena responded, "She's in the back. But Ava requested me to give you this before you visit her." She gave me a big envelope that was sealed with red wax and yellowed with age. Ava's handwriting, meticulous even and very maternal, was my name. I cracked the seal and opened the pages, my fingers shaking. The handwritten letter was lengthy, spanning 7 pages. Before Jorge, Ava informed me about her life, about the birth of Maria. She talked about how afraid and young she was when she decided to give her up. She talked about the years she spent looking the anguish and the remorse. She talked about how it had been a miracle that she had discovered me later in life. She revealed why she never sought to get in touch directly, saying she never felt she deserved it. "We saw from a distance, but I didn't want to interfere with the life you were creating. Every graduation, every birthday, we were pleased with you." I had to pause reading twice for a little moment because my eyes were burning and my hands were shaking silently. She made one brief request at the end of the letter. "Introducing your sister, you deserve to know that you were never alone. Not because I ask." Not at all. She wasn't either. I wiped my face, gave Elena a nod, and gently folded the letter. "I'm prepared." She showed me the way to a private meeting room down the corridor. A woman who was about 6 years older than me was standing inside when the door slowly opened. Her eyes were warm yet sleepy, and her black hair was put up. When I entered, she glanced up, and we simply gazed at one another for a while. Nobody made a move. Then she added, "So you're Cole?" With a sad grin. I gave a nod. "You're Maria, too." She appeared to be about to say anything further when her phone suddenly died. Without responding, she looked down, scowled, and flipped it face down. "I apologize," she said. "This week has been strange. I wanted to meet you, but I nearly didn't make it. I had to meet you." Opposite her, I took a seat. "Were you aware of me?" According to her, not until almost a year ago. In her letter, Ava stated that she had no expectations. She only wanted me to be aware that she had a new kid. I took a while to reply. I wasn't prepared. Then, after the plane crash, I guess I realized, time's not something you can buy more of. Slowly I nodded, the weight of it all still sinking in. "So where does that leave us?" Maria looked me dead in the eye. "That's what I want to figure out. But there's something else. Something you should probably know before we go any further." I leaned in hard, starting to pick up. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph, faded old with worn corners. She slid it across the table, and when I saw who was standing in the background of that photo behind Ava, behind Maria, I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach because I recognized him. I stared at the photograph, heart pounding in my chest like a war drama. It was grainy, clearly taken decades ago, but the face in the background was unmistakable. Cropped near the edge, arms crossed and partially turned away. Was Dennis the man I called Dad my entire life? The same Dennis who used to tuck me in when I was little. The same man who once taught me to tie my shoelaces, who took me on bike rides, who later signed a will leaving me nothing. Maria saw the recognition in my face before I said a word. So she said, her voice low. "You see it too?" I looked up slowly. "Why was he there?" Maria sighed, folded her hands, and leaned forward. "That photo was taken in Albuquerque, 1994, about a year before you were adopted. Ava didn't know it was taken. Someone else in her circle snapped it at a dinner party when she found it years later. She almost threw it away. She thought she was seeing things, but it was him, Dennis. She never figured out why he was there, or how he was connected to anyone in that room. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to process what that meant. Are you saying my adoptive father knew Ava? We don't know how well, Maria said. But yeah, that's what Ava suspected after she found the photo. She went digging. She found out Dennis used to work for a pharmaceutical company in New Mexico in the early 90s, the same company Ava consulted for before she built her own firm. Their paths crossed more than once. Wait, I said, sitting up straighter. Are you saying the adoption wasn't random, that he knew who I was? Maria hesitated. That's exactly what I'm saying. Ava was convinced it wasn't a coincidence, but by the time she realized it, it was too late. You were already with Dennis and Linda. She tried to reach out, but they cut off all communication. It's why she and George moved their operations east and disappeared from public view. She didn't want to risk your life being upended. My pulse thudded in my ears all my life. I thought Dennis and Linda had just happened upon me, that I'd been placed into their arms by chance or providence. But now this changed everything. It meant Dennis had chosen me, but not out of kindness, out of control. Why wouldn't they just tell me? I asked, voice cracking a little. Why would they go through all that and then treat me like an outsider? Maria's face softened. Ever wondered the same thing? But you said they never treated you like you were really theirs, right? Yeah, I said bitterly. They reminded me of that every day. Maybe that's the thing she said. Maybe Dennis wanted to keep you, not because he loved you, but because he wanted to hurt Ava. I stared at her. You're saying I was a pawn? She nodded slowly. For leverage or revenge, Ava never figured it out completely, but she carried the guilt for years that she lost you to them. I didn't know what to say. I felt like my brain was trying to rewrite my whole life, page by page. As I sat there, Maria reached over, placed a hand on mine. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I just think you deserve the truth. Ava didn't want to leave this world with secrets, and I think she hoped we'd find each other even if it was late. I squeezed her hand gently, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something settle inside me, a piece clicking into place. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I needed to hear it. Even if it hurts. We talked for hours after that. She showed me more letters. Ava had sent her shared photos, told me about her kids, her life, her regrets. And I told her mine. The broken holidays, the fake smiles, the loneliness. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to someone. She just got it. Eventually, she asked the question I didn't expect. So, what are you going to do about Ryan? I exhaled slowly. Honestly, I don't know. He came crawling the second he lost everything, and the way he looked at me like I was just a safety net, like I owed him. You don't, she said. You owe you whatever gives you peace. That's the only thing that matters. A week later, I flew back to New York. I'd left Ryan's call unanswered while I was gone, and I came back to 5 more voicemails and a text that simply said, please call. I'm losing everything. When I pulled into the driveway of the brownstone, I saw him waiting on the front steps. Duffel bag beside him, hoodie pulled up, looking like a kick. Doc. He stood when he saw me call. Thank God, man. I didn't know if you were even coming back. I parked, got out, and stood in front of him. This isn't your home, Ryan. I know, he said quickly. Hands raised. I'm not here to stay. Look. I'm sorry, okay? For everything. For the things I said at the will. For the stuff I did growing up. I was a kid, man. I didn't know what I was doing. You were still saying that stuff 2 years ago. I know he looked down. I was jealous. You had your life together. You didn't need them the way I did. I raised an eyebrow. You mean you needed their money? He didn't respond, just stared at the ground. I know about Dennis, I said. He looked up sharply. I know he knew Ava. I know I wasn't adopted by accident. He took me to get back at her, and he never loved me. Not really. And Linda just followed his lead. But you made a choice every single day to make sure I knew I didn't belong. His jaw clenched. I didn't know about any of that. That's the point, I said. You didn't want to know. You just wanted to win. Silence stretched between us. Then he said, so what now? You slammed the door in my face. Let me fall. I looked at him, at the man who had once been my brother in name, if not in spirit. And I made my decision. No, I said, I'm going to give you one chance. His eyes lit up. I'm setting up a charitable foundation under Ava and George's name. It's going to support underprivileged kids and young adults who were displaced like I was. I'm hiring people who understand hardship, who know how to build something from nothing. And I'm willing to give you a job entry level. Starting from scratch. You'll get a salary but nothing fancy. You'll report to someone else. And if you mess up, you're out. No safety net, no more bailouts. You take this seriously where you walk. He blinked at me. You're serious? Dead serious. He looked away, shoulders slumped. What if I'm not cut out for it? Then you figure it out, I said. Like I did. Like everyone has to. Or you walk away and I don't hear from you again. He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. I'll do it. It's been 8 months since then. Ryan took the job. He's been quiet, reserved. But he shows up. He's learning slowly. And I'm watching. Not as his savior, not as his brother, but as someone who knows what it's like to rise from nothing. Maria and I talk every week. I visited her family twice. Her kids call me Uncle Cole. And for the first time in my life, that title feels like it means something. The brownstone is still home, but it's not a castle built from revenge anymore. It's a place of memory, of healing, of legacy. Sometimes late at night, I read Ava's letters again. There's one line I always come back to. You were never a mistake. You were a second chance. And maybe now, finally, I get to be someone else's. Maybe that's what family is supposed to be. Not blood, not paper, but choice. And this time I'm choosing peace.